Our afternoon session first speaker is Dr. Sreyashi Samaddar, and she is a doctoral lecturer in Department of Biology at Brooklyn College, City University of New York. And her focus of study is molecular neuroscience and neuropharmacology. Yeah, and she had her PhD in biology from City University of New York Graduate Center, where her research background was neurodevelopment and spinal cord injury. Yeah, so today we have her for presentation. So yeah, Dr. Seriasi, please start.
Hello, everyone. So thank you so much for the introduction, Sadiq. I think Dr. But I think we collaborated in one of the book chapters, I believe, Abid. We spoke once before. So thank you
Yes.
for that. So both of you. So yes, briefly, I think Sadiq already mentioned my interests and where I graduated from. And
Yeah.
I'm going to present uh, something which interests me in, I mean, of course, I have some experience in anxiety, depression. I mostly come from a background of neurosciences. So my thesis work was on anxiety, depression. Then I worked on spinal cord injury for my postdoc thesis. And currently, in my current role as a faculty, I am working on neurodegenerative disorders and obviously um, neurodegenerative disorders, how they um, interplay with substance abuse or other kinds of issues, social issues. That is kind of the primary focus of my study. But today, what I'll be presenting is keeping in mind also the audience. Here, I will be presenting something that also is very interesting for me, is what do we know and how do we understand the adolescent brain? So I will be sharing my screen. I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So this I was interested in understanding the adolescent brain because adolescent to young adult brain, because I teach in a college, and a lot of the kids who come into college are either just fresh out of high school or maybe in their sophomore or junior years. I also have an upcoming teenager at home. So this topic really is very interesting, and I find it really amusing to know how much of this part we don't understand. So I'm just going to be sharing some of the facts with you, which we face in the modern world. So I'm just going to try to paint a picture of, how obviously we understand the digital age has changed a lot of things in good and bad ways. But how does our brain respond to it? And what are our vulnerabilities? We all have our vulnerabilities, even as adults. But I think when the brain is still developing, we are more vulnerable than as an adult. So, hmm. So I have kind of like um, compartmentalized the presentation in like few slides. I will be introducing the topic first, just talking a little bit about what brain is and what adolescent brain specifically is, what are its special characteristics. Then I'll be talking about adolescent brain and the social challenges that adolescent brain usually goes through. And of course, addiction is a part of a big challenge, a big social challenge that we do face globally. And addiction is, again, nothing to do with just being an adolescent or maybe a teenager. It is true for young people, it is true for middle-aged people, it's true at all ages. But it is important because to understand adolescent brain and how triggers of addiction come to adolescent brain, because they are the future of the world. They are the future of every country. They are the ones who will grow up and be the next generation. So it is important that we understand and we protect our next generation against these behaviors. And lastly, I'll be talking about some intervention strategies towards a healthy adult brain. There is so much of work going on in the world of neurobiology, having to do with different types of intervention strategies in different ways. But I'll just be talking. I won't delve very deep into all those methodologies and all those things, but then it's just basic things that we can do in our everyday life just to make sure that we have our brain functioning properly. So to introduce brain, I'm not really sure about how many of you, I know that some of you might be having expertise in neurosciences. So obviously this information is redundant for them. But for those of you who are probably hearing the word brain for the first time, or maybe not really had a chance to dive deeper into what the brain is other than just an organ, these are some fundamental questions that we might ask, and this might trigger some curiosity amongst us. That why do we need to study brain? Like brain is just an organ, like stomach is an organ, heart is an organ, brain is another organ. So what is the relevance of really studying a brain? A brain is basically the controlling center. So heart, of course, heart is also equally important. Heart has to beat in order for us to be alive. But if the brain is dead, you must have heard of the word brain dead, colloquially used term, which is called brain dead, which means that the heart is beating, so the life is still there, but there is no functionality with any organ because the brain is not functioning. So, so this is a very tricky situation where we try to understand the role of brain, what brain means for the other organs of the body. Our everyday actions related to brain activities, like every single thing we do, like little things to big things. You probably sipping on a cup of coffee, you probably, writing your notes down. Whatever you're doing, every single thing is related to brain activities. Our emotions related to brain functioning. We sometimes have this popular phrase, mind and brain, heart and mind, which comes first, which controls what. So there are lots of these kinds of discussions that we have. So, and we always feel that, oh, you are emotional because your heart likes to feel in that way. But in reality, our emotions also have their centers in brain. The feeling of being happy, the feeling of being dejected, the feeling of being sad, the feeling of being rewarded. These are also things that have centers, that specific centers in the brain. Can we train our brains? Can we make our brains to learn certain things? Yes, of course. That is what is learning and memory. It's a huge, huge, big topic. There is so much of work going on how we can train our brain, how we can control sometimes things that we want to do, and some positive kinds of activities that we might, and that's exactly I'm going to circle back at this part. Can we train our brains? How do we tell our brains what is the right thing to do? And this is important for a growing brain to understand that. And lastly, is understanding the brain important for the choices we make in our lives? I mean, does it really matter? Of course it matters. Small choices to big choices, every single thing that we decide in our life does matter and gets controlled by the brain. So I think my own career pathway of choosing neurobiology as my specialization revolves around the fact that I was very intrigued by the fact that how huge the impact of brain could be in persons' individual lives. And what are the different things that can happen if the brain is not functioning in the right way? So that's a little bit of an introduction. This is a kind of a figure, very superficial, just to understand some of the important parts. Of course, I'm not going to go over every single thing because this is not a neurobiology class, but I just chose to put up this figure just to, make you understand that the brain might look something from outside, and it actually has its own compartments inside for functionalities. And also morphologically, it is very different. And the brain, if we take out the brain very fresh, human brain or even rat and mouse animal model brains, it's very mushy. And it is not like a muscle. It is not a bone. It is not full of other kinds of connective tissue. It is basically a very mushy structure which is formed of a tissue called nervous tissue. It's just a category of tissue on its own. And usually, as we see that this figure shows us color-coded parts of the brain, and this obviously shows us different areas which are associated, like the number one is the occipital lobe. We have like 4 lobes: occipital, parietal, cerebral, frontal, and temporal lobes. So the occipital lobe is responsible for vision, and the others are responsible for different other functions. But what I'm going to be focusing on today's topic more importantly is to understand the adolescent brain and how the adolescent brain is different from a child's brain or an adult brain. And we'll be talking about this specific part in the frontal lobe, which is called the prefrontal cortex. I have a picture later in one of the slides where I can show you much better. So prefrontal cortex is this front part of the brain right here. It's on exactly the front of the brain. It is on the both sides. And that is responsible for balance, emotional thinking, self-control, self-regulation. And there's another interesting part in the brain, which is called limbic system. It is all the way lodged inside, and another figure for that. But you can see this is another sagittal section through the brain. Sorry. And that will show where the limbic system is. And the limbic system is exactly the opposite. Limbic system is all full of emotions, the feeling of being happy, the feeling of being rejected. So very, very interesting combination of how different parts of the brain control different functions in us. So this is where I'm going to introduce the adolescent brain development. So how is an adolescent brain different from a child's brain, like a baby's brain or even an adult brain? There is a lot of renovation which actually goes on during the adolescent period time, which is technically teenagers into young adults before early 20s. There are some structural changes, so there are some brain changes which takes place. Adolescence obviously involves synaptic pruning. Synaptic pruning is synapses, which is connection between neurons that is being fine-tuned, and of course myelination to optimize neural circuitry for efficient brain function. This is very important, limbic system and prefrontal cortex, and the emotional system is associated with the limbic system. This develops much earlier than the prefrontal cortex. And this causes elevation or heightening of emotional responses where we still don't know how to regulate ourselves. So a lot of you here are probably high school students. And of course, some of us are adults over here. So we have all gone through adolescent periods, being a teenager, being a young adult, getting into high school, getting into college. And it's a whole ocean of emotions that we experience every single day with every single thing in our lives. There is a fine balance of how we self-regulate ourselves and what we actually can do, and what we feel like doing. So even though we feel that this is the mind controlling us, it's actually the brain regions which control us. And this is what this is what I'm going to talk about today. What is the interplay between limbic system and prefrontal cortex, and how does it modify or modulate how we behave? So our behavioral implications, of course, include neurological imbalance leading to increased risk-taking, emotional reactivity, and sensation-seeking behaviors in teenagers. And this is perfectly normal. There is nothing wrong in it. It is just a part of growing and developing. And every one of us, whether we acknowledge it or not, we have all gone through similar emotions in our lives. So we have always felt as if we can conquer the world. We can do every single thing. Our parents are underestimating us and not realizing our real potential. We want to do this. We feel very strongly for a particular thing. These are all parts of limbic system in its full swing. And the part that the prefrontal cortex is unable to exert its brake system. So it's still very similar to driving a car. It's like when you press on the accelerator, the car just goes ahead. But the car also needs a brake. Why? Because the car has to know where to stop. So the stop system is kind of still developing, but it's a little lagging behind. And that's why there's always like this imbalance which exists in the adolescent brain. And of course, there is environment, which plays a huge role in, that imbalance which is already there. So the environmental sensitivity, of course, is to do with all the external influences like social media, peer pressure, what everyone else is doing, the feeling of missing out, etc. So this is true. This is true at every age. We all are under social peer pressures, but I think it affects us most when we are still developing and growing, and we are swayed away, or we tend to get influenced by external activities more than what our inner self tells us to do. So this is a study which is an ongoing study. It is called ABCD, Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study. It's a huge initiative which is taken by um, it's kind of a group initiative which is taken by this organization, which involves a lot of federal partners like NIH, National Institute of Mental Health, National Institute of Substance Abuse. I mean, there is a whole lot of, you can just look this up in Google and you can see how many different institutes are actually participating in this study. And this study is to understand the adolescent brain and how the adolescent brain develops over time. This is the largest long-term study of the brain development which has been done. And they publish papers. There are principal investigators from different parts of the US which participate. This is a location of all the ABCD research sites in the US. And you see that East Coast and West Coast is heavily populated with different research centers. So this is a research consortium consisting of the Coordinating Center, Data Analysis, Informatics and Resource Center. It contains 21 research sites across the country. And there are obviously volunteers, like 11,000 and 880 children aged from 9 to 10 years, which are actually taking part or participating in the study. So their brain will be tracked and traced, and they will be studied all along their way to growth into a young adult. And that's how we will know what are the different changes. A lot of their studies are imaging studies. Some of them are behavioral studies. So it's a huge, big project which is going on. And again, I mentioned this because a lot of you are in high school and then you are probably deciding on your career paths. This is something, there are a lot of internship opportunities also available in these kinds of research organizations that you can be a part of, and you can actually put on your CV or resume to, obviously enhance your portfolio. So this is another study which was published in the Journal of Integrated Neurosciences, Frontiers of Integrated Neurosciences. And this talks about, very interestingly, what are the measures which we need to consider when we are understanding the adolescent brain transitioning into adulthood. So this is showing us the pubertal onset and how it transitions into adulthood. So the levels of measurement would be, of course, genetic. There are, of course, some genetic predispositions that we all have: hormonal, neural, and behavioral. Of course, our environment plays a role, the kind of childhood we have, and the kind of environment that the family provides a child with. There are, of course, some neuronal changes which are meant to happen: morphological, anatomical, physiological changes. There are some structural changes going on. And of course, in the context of environmental and behavioral, the role of social context. At the micro level, it is peer presence, of course, friends around us; social exclusion, whether we are accepted in our social circles or not; whether our friend considers as our friend or not; whether we are not considered; whether you are sitting alone in the lunch table, yes or no; whether you are with your friends in the lunch table, having a lovely time, having fun with friends. All these things matter. Fear conditioning, social learning, peer feedback, whether what our friends tell us about how we look, how we dress, how we feel, how we talk, whether we are popular or not. And of course, economic games. Of course, what games? It seems that kids who take part in sports activities in US are considered to be more popular. Whether it is true or not, I'm not going to get into that conversation. But then every single thing, what an adolescent person does matters in the way society looks at us. And on a real level, it is like school. What is school? What kind of an experience do you have in school? Parents and siblings, what kind of experience do you have at home? Do you have siblings? Do you share a good bonding with your siblings? Do you have a family which is peaceful, or you are growing up in a family which is full of domestic violence? Peers, sociometric assessments, and of course, online, which is a huge, big thing now. Online social media, we live in a parallel transient world these days where the real life is where we are physically, and there's a transient virtual life that we have, all of us. So these are all the different measures that we need to consider when understanding what kind of changes adolescent brain can go through. And the green section shows impact. Why do we need to understand this? What are the impact? It has different kinds of impact. It has impacts in the scientific world. Characterizing relationship between brain and behavior during adolescent development is important for identifying the optimal conditions that we can provide these kids while they grow up. And we can provide these individual caregiving situations or counseling at school or awareness, everything which is important for that scientific understanding is very important. Social impact is psychoeducation. This is something which should be discussed in the school. It should be a part of curriculum. Regarding adolescent mental health and well-being, we need to speak up, or it is okay to be excluded. It is perfectly fine to have failures in life. It is perfectly fine to actually not get everything in life while you are growing up. We sometimes feel that failures are the end of the world. If you do not have something, if you do not get something, if you don't score enough grades, if you don't have a particular thing you wanted for, or maybe you wanted to be a part of a sports team, it's like the end of the world. But it is actually not. It's actually always beneficial to face failures very early on in life, because your system, your brain gets programmed how to handle stress, how to handle failures, and you can still recover. You can still get up on your feet and work hard and try other things. Maybe you're good at something else. So that has a huge societal impact. And of course, policymakers, government, federal laws, education, etc. It is important for even the policymakers to understand how the children work, how our child's brain work, how a teenager's brain work. Accordingly, the curriculum could be designed. Accordingly, other expectations could be designed from the school life. So this is a picture which was published in the Journal of Neurosciences, a comparison from child to adolescent and to the adult brain. And what this picture is showing us is the different amounts of gray matter, and we can see how it is different from child to adolescent, and then adolescent to the adult gray matter. And this is the color coding from green towards yellow shows lessening of the gray matter, and from purple to pink shows more of the gray matter. This is a kind of a study which was being done to understand the changes, anatomical, morphological changes in a developing brain. So initially, very, very early on, people used to think that, brain is formed very early on in life and we don't develop, or that's not true. Brain and nervous system, rather, brain and spinal cord is one of the first things to be formed in a fetus. That means even before a child is born inside the mother's womb. But then even after the birth of a child, the brain keeps on growing and developing. The brain is more active, more developing, absorbing everything around in the environment when it's a child. But even in the adolescent years, things are getting fine-tuned. And that's why I started with the word renovation. There is a huge amount of renovation which goes on in an adolescent brain until we reach adulthood. So, there is a huge amount of reconstruction going on, and that is responsible for the different emotions and the ways how we behave. So there's a development mismatch, and that has behavioral implications on the way we project ourselves. So we talked about, this is something that I mentioned, I think, in the first couple of slides, and I'm going to talk about two systems in particular, the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. So the limbic system, this picture in front of us shows us the prefrontal cortex is right here. It is exactly at the front of the brain, the tip of the frontal lobe. And there are 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex: empathy, insight, response, flexibility, emotion regulation, body regulation, morality, intuition, attuned communication, and fear modulation. So these are all things which come with a little bit of age, which understanding how we control ourselves. You are extremely mad at a person, but then you control yourself. Whereas limbic system or the limbic brain, it is all the way inside and it is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, stress response, which is, we also call it colloquially the adrenaline surge or adrenaline flight, fight response. It means you are just like having an adrenaline rush. Bikers speeding with bikes, sports car people driving sports cars at high speed. That's adrenaline rush. You basically, it's like a I do or I die. So that is the limbic system which comes. What is the implication? What do I get out of it? Sense of, I think, reward, getting rewarded. If you win the race, it gives you a lot of, it boosts your ego. And it is like, oh, I did a great job because I won the race. But if you lose the race, it's kind of pain. It's emotional pain. So the thinking, am I safe? Do people want me? These kinds of questionings also come to mind. Do people want me? Am I popular? Am I being loved? Am I being liked by people? All the emotions live here. So there is a little bit of a difference in the timing of development of these two systems. The limbic system development is early. It matures early. It drives our emotional processing and reward-seeking behaviors. So you do something, you get a huge round of applause. It boosts your emotional ego and it makes you feel good. And you are ready to do anything which will make you feel good. But on the other hand, the prefrontal cortex maturation is gradual. It's not late, it's gradual. So there is a little bit of a lag or a delay in these two system development. And what that happens is it enables, what does the prefrontal cortex do? It helps us in planning our stuff. That means, when we say plan before you do something, think of the consequences before you say something. That is from the prefrontal cortex. Impulse control. Well, I know that I know how to ride a bike, but I'm not going to get into a bike race. This part of the understanding comes from the prefrontal cortex. Decision making by mid-20s, that is where we slow down, that curve goes down, and we try to think through every decision that we want to take. That, oh, what are the pros and the cons? What is going to happen after this? What are the consequences? The behavioral implications are, of course, imbalance, which causes adolescents to exhibit more risk-taking behavior. Peer influence. Oh, my friend said, oh, why don't you try one cigarette? Why don't you try a bottle of beer? There's nothing wrong in it. Everything is fine. We all do that. Nobody's going to die from it. So risk-taking behavior, where you are trying to expose yourself to new things in life, and you don't have the self-control because you don't know that one bottle of beer can lead to 10 bottles of beer. So that is where the prefrontal cortex will come in. And we have emotionally charged decisions where we just sway away in emotions. Hormones also do play a huge role. Puberty hormones will amplify emotional sensitivity like oxytocin, testosterone, estrogen, which are also in full swing around those teenage years.
This Bihari group has interesting. They have this Zoom session going for young students.
Should I continue?
Yes.
That's no vulnerability is happening in Hyderabad. She went there.
Hello.
Mr. Hashmi, it's your mic is on, so can you please mute it? Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Sade.
Yeah, no problem.
So,
Yeah, you continue. Yeah.
turning onto social media and neural vulnerability, of course, we are all aware of this. I'm not going to get into the details of it. All different kinds of social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc., etc. I don't even know Snapchats, etc. Whatever I am aware of. There might be many others out there which I'm not aware of. So, how many likes do we have? How many reactions do we have? What reactions do we have? A friend I like, did that friend give me a reaction, etc., etc. So these are all real life things. So there is a reward circuit activation associated with digital platforms. Social media triggers dopamine surges. And what is dopamine? Now, bringing into more details of neurobiology, dopamine is a chemical which is released as a neurotransmitter in different parts of the brain. Dopamine has multiple functions. Dopamine is also responsible for our movements. And when we have deficiency of, very simply explaining that dopamine deficiency also leads to Parkinson's disease. But again, that is a different function of dopamine led by different round of receptors. But dopamine is also responsible for other functions, and one of them is reward circuit activation. And there's a specific region in the brain called ventral striatum, which reinforces addictive engagement. So what are the cognitive impacts? There's a dopamine feedback loop, which overrides the prefrontal cortex control. So the prefrontal cortex, like I mentioned, is supposed to be controlling our limbic system and making everything under control. Okay, fine. You can do certain things, but you have to check yourself. You can get a glass of beer or a bottle of beer, but not more than that. So that is, or maybe you can indulge in some kind of activity, maybe watching television, maybe going out with friends, but maybe for an hour, maybe not for that because you have homework to do. So this self-control comes in with the help of the prefrontal cortex. But the dopamine feedback loops completely messes up that control system. And the receptors in the prefrontal cortex, they control three key aspects of the cognitive control, which is gating, maintaining, and relaying. So basically controlling. So FOMO, I think we are all aware of this word, fear of missing out. And online persona pressures increase stress, anxiety, compromising adolescent mental health. And this study was being done, the picture on the right-hand side, left-hand side bottom corner. This is a study which was being done with teenagers as to what is the percentage of different types of social activities that they perform, social media platforms, video sharing platforms, instant messaging, games and the virtual worlds, and blogs. So this was being done and published in this. So these are the references which also have included in here. And of course, then moving on to peer pressure, because these are all interrelated, and social validation. What is social validation? That means we need others to say I am good, and then only I will believe that I'm good, because I'm questioning myself, my own credibility. So what is social conformity? There is a neural system which works behind being socially validated. And social validation and social rejection comes with reward and pain systems. So this is our pain system, the pain network, how it functions. And then this is the reward system, which functions through this system. So I'm not going to get into the details of what these structures in the brain are, but I'm definitely going to be talking about like the reward network, physical pleasures, having a good reputation, being treated fairly, cooperating, giving to charity. And the pain network comes with physical pains, social exclusion, bereavement, being treated unfairly, negative social comparison. So these are all things which can cause the emotional pain. Now, we might think that, well, emotional pain is not as great as physical pain. It is not. It is exactly the same centers that are triggered when we have a physical pain are being triggered when we have emotional pain. So social rejection activates this particular center, anterior cingulate cortex and insula, areas linked to processing physical pain. And that has impact on adolescent behavior. Adolescents prioritize social acceptance, influencing behaviors to take risks in their life with substance use, to be more cool, to, get included in their social lives, just give in to what the friends want them to do. The digital persona, what projection of our own selves do we give out to the digital world, and emotional development, efforts to curate perfect online personas, promoting resilience and self-worth. What can we do? To what extent can we go to increase our self-worth or resilience? These are all things which come into picture when we talk about projecting ourselves. We always want to be looked up as someone who is, of a great stature, of, doing great in life, always being happy. You go into any social network, you will only see people talking about what accomplishments they have done, what good things they have done. And it feels as if everybody in the world other than myself or oneself, everybody is so happy because people don't showcase the negative parts of their lives. People don't show what are the challenges they face in life. Next is substance abuse and adolescent brain development. This is a very important topic which globally is important. And this is creeping into every part of the world, and we all need to be aware in order to protect our next generation. There is a huge role of dopamine in addiction, and this gets controlled by the mesolimbic areas, which is marked in this pink box. It is associated with pleasure and reward, seeking behaviors, addiction, emotion, and perception. And dopamine, when it regulates our reward system, it works through this system. Dopamine working through the nigrostriatal system is responsible for movement, which when goes wrong, leads to Parkinson's disease. And the other one is mesocortical system, which is for recognition, memory, attention, emotional behavior, and learning. So adolescent brain vulnerability, the adolescent brain is vulnerable towards getting tricked into certain things. So it is very susceptible. It's highly susceptible to substance abuse effects, of course, which impacts synaptic pruning and myelination. There is also dopamine pathway hijacking, and agents like nicotine, THC, and alcohol hijack dopamine pathways. And if that happens, then this completely messes up all systems, reinforcing addictive behaviors more strongly in adolescents than adults. Emotional social stress, emotional volatility, and social stress can also help in increasing the mechanism, the addiction of different substances, and could worsen situations. What are the preventive strategies? How do we handle this? That is very important. Education. Kids need to be made aware of these things which are out there. Be careful. Just have your, just have your antenna, completely receptive towards these kinds of people or individuals who might actually throw a challenge in front of you, and then you get trapped into that. Early intervention is very important. When you see something, if you start therapies, that is very important. Alternative coping methods are crucial to protect them and help adolescent brain development. And lastly, what are the intervention strategies for healthy development of the brain? Of course, when it comes to adolescents, we want to make sure that there are different ways how we channelize their energy and their emotional heightened energies into good things that they should do. So it could be exercises, engaging in exercises, participating in sports activities are very important. Keeping oneself hydrated is very important. Sleeping, enough sleep hours for 7 to 9 hours is very important. Learning, reading books is very important, which typically, even as adults, we have stopped reading books. Connecting with people, not just on social media, on virtual platforms, but maybe, meeting people, talking to them, or maybe just do some volunteer work, do some social work. Diet is very important. Any kind of diet which is rich in fat, rich in glucose tends to also, we gain weight. It kind of jeopardizes our physiology. Challenges like playing puzzles, or maybe other kinds of challenges like, where you answer quizzes, etc. Habits, not smoking, not drinking, breathing, doing yoga, meditation, etc. And of course, looking after our mental health, that, we need time for self-care. You need time to reflect on your own actions sometimes. So there are different ways how we can take care of our brain health and mental health. So enhancing inhibitory control, that means teaching oneself self-regulation. That means even if I can, I will not do certain things. Decision-making processes and making oneself responsible for the decisions they take in life. Promoting positive reinforcement. That means as adults, rewarding healthy behaviors in academics. That means if you choose to spend time in studying and not going out and doing wrong things, that decision-making process should be positively reinforced. That means as parents and educators and as adults in the society, we should help kids, we should help children understand that their positive behavior is being rewarded. Digital literacy education. Digital time is, we can't take computers away from anyone. We are all dependent on them. But the time that they get to spend on the computers should be geared towards or channelized towards doing something productive, not just messaging or posting videos or just being on social media. Building resilience and motivation. This is something that I was mentioning before, that resilience only comes when they face failures in life. And it is very important to face failures in life. So when they face failures in life, as adults and even educators in the school or even the college and adults at home, we should tell them it is perfectly fine. It is not the end of the world. So that helps them build the resilience and still move on in life, motivating them for other things. So this is the conclusion. I would end my presentation here. The key takeaways and the future directions. Yes, critical brain development. Adolescence is a very critical time for brain development, which includes fine-tuning of the brain structures. There is a huge impact of social media, which we cannot completely make it zero, but then we can channelize the time in digital platforms to be more productive in terms of their outputs. And of course, future intervention is integrating mental health education and talking about these like more openly with kids so that they are more aware than getting trapped into situations which can harm them. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening to me. Any questions?
It's Mohammed here.
Hello.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a couple of questions regarding, are you part of ABCD study?
No, I'm not a part of ABCD.
Oh, you're not. Okay. Yeah. So are you doing any sort of addiction studies or any substance of abuse in your lab or
Yes,
the
yes. I'm
university?
actually, yeah, I'm kind of like, so my study or my focus is more on adult addiction and having to do with neurodegenerative disorders, not really
Okay.
adolescent studies, because adolescent studies is, as you all know, is heavily controlled in the country. And I mean, I might eventually venture out into adolescent studies, but not right now. But yes, substance abuse is mostly to do with adults.
So how
And
about binge? Yeah, binge alcohol or other substance abusing students, particularly young
yeah,
students or adolescent students, they are using so much alcohol and other drugs. So how do you think that
absolutely.
where these studies will lead, or do you have any plans? Are you studying in this area of binge?
Well, it's basically so the way it works is binge drinking or binge alcohol, or the way we call it. It is just the same as binge watching Netflix. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's also another very important thing that we talk about, that addiction could be coming as different ways. It's also Netflix addiction, which is binge watching episodes after
Yeah.
episodes. So I think it has to do with self-control and
Mhm.
the way how there is no there are there are no really any kind of medications which are out there which can actually control. It can there is nothing more preventative drugs. I would like to put it that way. It's more like therapies. It's more counseling, and it's more like early intervention, which is when we see something happening around the same things. It requires people to talk about it. Taboos are actually harmful. If a child, lot of the times, what adolescents do or what teenagers do or what even young adults do is they don't talk about a problem that they're having, which I think should change, and that can bring a lot of differences in the way we look at things. But yes, I think the study is more in a very formative stage where people are trying to figure out how do we handle the situation. There is no treatment per se as of now. But having said that, it's a young brain. It's not like an old aged brain that cannot be changed. There are certain habits which is very hard to change in a 70, 80-year old, because it's just hard to rewire them. But the rewiring process becomes very easy, or it is less challenging when they are still young. So channelization is a huge part of the adolescent brain. And I think a huge responsibility of that lies in the parents or the educators, wherever they are, the school, college, wherever they are, basically the adults around them. So we
So,
have a huge responsibility.
Right. So when do you think that this adolescence brain development takes place, till which age?
It's
What
like
year?
it's usually adolescence to early 20s, maybe, even the first couple of years when they get to college, it's still the same thing. I mean, I teach in a college and I can see the difference of behavior in freshmen when they first come in from high school and when they graduate, when they're around like 21, 22, you can see that huge difference in the way they approach certain things, the responsibility,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time
This-
management, everything.
Right. This you're saying behavior. How about morphologically, physiologically, or like imaging studies have
Imaging
shown that?
studies. Yes, the
Okay.
gray matter, that's one of the studies there are many studies like this, but I just showed one of them. I think the brain changes in terms of the gray matter content. In the
Right.
time, the gray matter content changes, not really the brain volume or the brain size, really. It is not like that, but I think the
Of course, pruning
myelination
and
changes.
yeah, right.
Exactly,
Rewiring
exactly.
and pruning. Yeah, exactly.
And again, like as we know, pruning and synaptic plasticity is basically having to do with, what exactly you are learning. And the more you learn, the more you read, it's more synaptic connections, it's more spines. And there are other studies which have been done also related to learning, which have shown that more learning creates more dendritic spines, which means more synapses.
Right.
So that has got nothing to do with adolescence. It's true for adolescents and adults or even children. But it's just that the wiring can be positively changed. Like that's what I mentioned in the last slide, that when we channelize their energy in education or reading something or learning something in a more positive way, that can actually help in rewiring the brain, synaptic pruning and myelination.
So you have any program at your college to counsel the young developing brains or students who are,
We do, yes,
yeah,
we do
okay.
have counseling, and of course um, it's very regulated and it's very confidential. But yes, there are facilities available where, so they have to, the other thing is they have to speak up. Counseling can only be done when they come with a problem. If they do not come with a problem, if they do not speak up to say where the problem is, then it's hard to help them.
Right. Yeah.
So some kids don't, not children, some teenagers, they're in general quiet. I think all of you must have, this is an age where they kind of go into their shell. They don't want to talk a lot. They will only talk when they want to talk. But I think it's important to
That's where
keep
the
them.
problem lies. That's where the problem lies.
Exactly.
And at that time you have to tap the correct.
I'm nice presentation. Yeah.
Thank you so
Even
much.
I also work in the same field. So just I have
Okay.
a quick question. There are 1,000 receptors as well as the neurotransmitters. Which receptor and neurotransmitter is important for just like some Alzheimer's disease or some kind of neurological disorders?
Any specific neurotransmitter you're meaning?
Yeah, just like I will give an example, because acetylcholine receptor alpha 7, it has some kind of anti-inflammatory role. So apart from this receptor, are there any other receptors which are having this kind of role for anti-inflammatory action?
Yeah, I don't have it on top of my mind because I don't really work with anti-inflammation. That's not my specialty or expertise. But if I have read papers, or I know people who work on in several tau models which are anti-inflammatory. Yeah, I had a lab during my postdoc days who used to work with Alzheimer's, and they used to work on some kind of receptor which was actually anti-inflammatory. But that's not my specialty, so I really don't know exactly the name of it. But yes, there are several, I think, several of them.
Thank you very much.
If that's okay. So thank you so much for your presentation. It was really nice. And I'm not sure if I missed this, but I was wondering, besides positive reinforcement from adults and mentors, have you thought of different ways to incentivize young adults to handle their self-control?
Yes, and again, this is more to do with behavioral management, which is like more more having to do with, there are a lot of studies which actually are going on with diet, the kind of food that they eat. And diet does play a role. There are plenty of studies which work on these. That means the kind of food triggers mood. And that mood figuring is also responsible for positive behaviors. So they're all connected, like healthy food, less of fat, less of glucose, that triggers a healthy lifestyle. A healthy lifestyle is, so apart from awareness, apart from positive reinforcement, it's like just to bring in more basics of the life, like probably just having, schools serve healthy food, probably reinforcement of other kinds of activities, sports, games, etc. So there are other ways. So there is drug intervention, of course, but then I don't think drug intervention is kind of the first thing that people want to do, especially with growing adults and adolescents, but it's more to do with lifestyle changes. I mean, drug interventions are, I mean, even for adults who are under addiction problems and issues, when people go for, people go for relapse therapies and etc., they will give more generic drugs, like which is going to take them off or sometime off from, or it's going to negatively act. But the method is very different in case of adolescents.
That's very
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sreyashi. It was nice,
Thank you so
nice
much.
having you. Yeah. So yeah, let's
Thank you.
move to another.